Namaste, everyone. A viewer of mine has asked for the following from me. You should make a video about how Persia influenced ancient Greece. So, this is a subject that I can absolutely delve into and that I will absolutely delve into. I'm going to be delving into not so much the influence that ancient Persia had on ancient Greece, in as much as the influence that Zoroastrianism has had on the West as a whole. A quick summation of it, actually. I would first like to point out that it's really only been in the Kali Yuga that cultures started deviating from pure Vedic culture. Zoroastrianism, to be very specific, while it is still under the Dharma umbrella, it's also really the first break from Sanatana Dharma, or the origins of Abrahamism, if you will, to some extent. But basically, and in essence, this is the bottom line. This idea of a supreme good and absolute, this idea of a supreme devil, like what you have in Christianity, the very first inklings of a Satan or Satan-like personage, the very first inklings of a dualistic worldview, underpinned by two competing gods, one being good and one being evil, the very first inklings of born again and saved evildoers, evil beings, and sinners, the very first inklings of born again and redeemed nations and civilizations, and of bringing light into a dark world, and of improving the world, mankind, and civilizations. This all begins with Zoroastrianism. This all goes back to Zoroastrianism, and Zoroastrianism as a remodeled branch and offshoot of the original Vedic path of Persia and of our forebears. Its angelology and demonology is framed in a context. Both are framed in a context that would be familiar to Western scholars for both of our Proto-Abrahamic. If you were to travel back in time to the ancient world in search of the religion that most resembled how Christians, Muslims, and Jews have viewed the inner workings of our world and of its supernatural forces, you wouldn't have found it in Hellenism, you wouldn't have found it in the pre-Christian Roman paganism, you wouldn't have found it in Egypt, you wouldn't have found it in China, you wouldn't have found it in India, you would have found it in Zoroastrianism. If you also take a look at how the church derides the deities of the Olympian and Roman pantheons as demons, that was a position that our Zoroastrian forebears held about them as well, despite them not being Abrahamic in any way. Not only that, but we were also opposed to idols, to the gods being physically represented in the form of statues as well, if the accounts of Herodotus are to be believed. And this is where the creed that Islam adopted as its Shahada, there is no God but one, fits into the mix too. For our forebears would have been also opposed to all of the idols that would have been present in the Kaaba at Mecca, despite having next to no knowledge about any of the pre-Islamic Arab deities. As far as its ties to Christian theology, if there are any ties to speak of, its theology would agree with the Dwaphosite position of Christology and not with the Monophysite one. And it's the Dwaphosite view of who and what Jesus was that's prevailed in the West since the Nicene Creed was institutionalized in the Roman Church. And this was something that the fathers of the Armenian Church in particular, who were staunchly anti-Persian and anti-Zoroastrian, and who had their Saint Vardan martyred at the hands of the Sassanids, astutely noticed, hence why they adopted the Monophysite Christology at the Chalcedon Council instead. On top of all of this, faiths and cultures, along with goods and commodities, were spread and transmitted across the world, across the old world, through its territories and even through its waters. the Silk Route, the Hippie Trail, the Christian Missionary Trail, the Buddhist Missionary Trail, the Mithraic Missionary Trail, the Hindu Missionary Trail, the Manichaean Missionary Trail, the Sufi and Islamic missionary trails all went through its lands. Portuguese, British, Russian, and Dutch explorers all went through its waters, the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, the Caspian Sea, the Indian Ocean, and the like. And as far as those lands and waters, one has to bear in mind that the nation's geographic scope during the lifespan of Iranian as attested to in the Avestan literature, and during the era of its pre-Islamic dynasties and also its pre-Safavid and pre-Qajar frontiers, when it still encompassed Mesopotamia, the Caucasus, Central Asia, and the like. The most strategic and most integral sea lanes and waterways, along with the most strategic and most integral overland routes, are here. Iran is the spiritual wellspring of mankind, and a nation that was founded as a cause, and that cause is to improve, save, and baptize the world, even if its soil is nuked to ashes by the forces of Ahriman. The cause will continue. And this is where I end my dissertation. Thank you for watching.